Hi, everyone. Hi, Chris.
Hi,
Thanks.
Susan.
Thanks for joining us, everybody. Thanks for joining us on this sunny summer afternoon. Well, it's sunny where I am. Soofa is a remote company, so we're all across the country, but I'm personally sitting about 10 miles west of Boston in a small town called Weston. And I'm Sufa's Director of Media Sales, and I'm super excited to host everyone today, especially because I have one of my truly favorite people in the business co-hosting with me, and that's Chris Farnkopf. He's the VP of National Sales for Adkom. So thanks for being here, Chris.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Thrilled to participate.
Yeah, maybe you can give us a little bit sort of a Chris 101, your journey into out of home and something maybe about Adcom that you want to share.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, like you, Susan, at Soofa, Adkom is a remote company. We're distributed across the country. Ordinarily, I hail from the Big Apple, but it's sunny where I am today as well. I'm in the Tampa Bay area, taking in the dog days of summer. Like you mentioned, I lead national sales here at Adkom. Adkom, unlike most out-of-home media owners or publishers, doesn't own a single piece of media. We're a technology company that has built a fabulous marketplace, bringing together 400 high-quality independent media owners like Soofa together into a single marketplace to give agencies and advertisers a one-click solution when planning and executing an outdoor campaign. So I've been here 4 years now, I think. Time flies. Interesting time for us to launch a business. I joined in 2020, which was challenging, I think, for many in the out-of-home media space, but really forced us to think strategically and work more closely with marketers on their priorities in the out-of-home space, driving efficiencies and automation. So very exciting time.
Great. And I have to say, since you listed on your LinkedIn profile, you're a dog dad, a proud dog dad. So I'm wondering, I have a cat who's like literally locked behind a few doors because she's sassy, but we're going to see either of you boys come on here and
If you get lucky, you may. Yes, I'm a proud dog dad. We've got two rescues that we brought home during the pandemic. Shout out to Muddy Paws Rescue in New York, who takes dogs in from kill shelters all across the country, pairs them with foster parents in New York, and we failed not once but twice at fostering. So I've got two that are here with me today. You may hear them or see them. Johnny Cash is a 3-year-old, 4-year-old lab hound mix, and Chewbacca is a 2-year-old Aussie Shepherd mix.
Wow, good names. Johnny Cash. I like it. Well, we're going to spend a few minutes today sort of talking about what makes these next couple of months or so special, a political advertising season. And I have been interested in politics, I don't know, as long as I can remember, literally. I think I was sort of weaned on it in some way. My dad was always involved in local politics and stuff. So, you know, I'm on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being an avid avoider and 10 being obsessed. I'm 10ish. Chris, how about you?
I mean, call it a political response, but I think I find myself in the middle of the road, and maybe for good reason. I think politics might be best served staying out of bars and maybe out of some media environments, which is what we're here to chat about today. But I think I find myself right smack in the middle.
All right, Mr. Moderation. I like it. It's always good, always wise.
Absolutely. When you're dealing with 400 independent media owners that are at varying, ends of the spectrum, I think it's important for us to be a good neutral sounding board. So that's where I find myself.
There you go. Well, let me see here. I'm failing on my job. I want to advance us a slide. We did our little introduction here. I'm not keeping up very well already, but this slide is really interesting. I mean, you just glance at it graphically and see that political spending is on the rise. So the projections have been upped recently to, a record-breaking 10.7 almost $billion, a 19% increase from the 2020 cycle. And, this has been going on for a while. There's really a pivotal decision in 2010 by the Supreme Court. It was a case called Citizens United versus the Federal Elections Committee, and it's fueled, I think, nearly, unmanageable growth cycle over cycle. So the court ruled to strike down a prohibition on corporate independent expenditures, which enabled corporations and other outside rather groups to engage in an unlimited amount of campaign spending. And the court kind of thought that the existing regulations around it would keep some transparency involved. So I think it was an unanticipated risk, because in fact, there's been a tremendous amount of what they've taken to calling, dark money that's supporting these super PACs. Dark meaning it's just not transparent. So, a super PAC is mostly or entirely funded by kind of a vaguely named group, and it doesn't disclose its funding sources, which, in denies voters crucial information, but it also means the spending just is, record breaking. So campaign spending by corporations and other outside groups increased nearly 900% between 2008 and 2016. In 2020, the total spend was 14.4 billion from this super PAC group. And that was up from 5.7 billion in 2018. So I'm probably making you tune out, but you get the idea. There is a
Yeah.
ton of money going into these efforts these days. And what that means to you, to me, to people that certainly place media or consume media, especially, is really tight inventory and higher CPMs. Disruption to your planned campaigns, with lots of placements being preempted across most platforms. And I know, having worked in broadcast television, that, the make goods and the credits, you're in December, you're still trying to sort it all out. I think one of the biggest issues, and I know you and I have talked about this, Chris, and you'll get into it a little bit later when we talk specifically about out of home, but in terms of brand safety, in terms of placement, it's an incredibly challenging environment to make sure that your client or your message doesn't end up in a spot that you don't want. It doesn't always need to be bad, but there's viewer fatigue, and there's deep fakes, and there's, algorithms in social media that direct a point of view into your feeds and my feeds. Not to mention, a personal problem for me is, not just the robocalls, but the texts. I don't need to answer my phone, but those SMS campaigns are brutal. So now I know there's a lot of expertise around this, right? So I have some good buyer friends who work really hard to plan around it, and they may sit out a cycle. Certainly that's one way to go. But a lot of advertisers have just finished a sit out cycle from the Olympics, right? If you weren't going to play in the Olympics, you hang back. So now here's another cycle adjacent to that. Do you want to hang back again, or do you want to find a way to optimize given the challenges that, we've just looked at here? So, we can start you off, Chris, talking about out of home, if you will, with the lovely statistic that the piece of the political pie is 3 to 5% on average in out of home.
Yeah, it is almost negligible, right? If I were to summarize what we're experiencing coming off of the Olympic Games, what consumers are experiencing as we head into the final hours of this election cycle, it's a very loud time for advertisers. And like you mentioned, many choose to sit this one out. I think it's an incredible opportunity to lean into channels like out of home. It's like you said, a negligible part of the media mix for most political advertisers, 3 to 5%. The lion's share is being spent in television. It's no secret that TV is one of the best reach mediums. Maybe the best kept secret is that out of home too is a great reach vehicle. Let's not let these political advertisers know. We don't want them crowding our airwaves, so to speak.
Right.
But I think it's a great opportunity for brands to lean into out of home versus turning off that marketing engine altogether. As I look across many of the media owners or publishers that we represent, Some of them do accept political advertising, but those that do can be very selective based on maybe personal beliefs that they hold. Is there a specific candidate that they want to be seen supporting in some way, or not, perhaps. There are disclaimers required on the creative, and maybe for good reason, right? To protect voters, make sure we're not spreading misinformation like we see in other channels, et cetera. And I think that's why, at least at the federal level, we see so few billboards for candidates. And again, I think that's a great reason for brands that are looking to reallocate their media dollars. A great reason for them to look at out of home. We could go on probably for longer than 30 minutes about all of the great benefits of out of home as a media channel. I mentioned one of them. Reach is incredible, and I'd say rivals television if you put a smart plan together. But also the targetability and measurability is on par with digital these days. And you mentioned at the start of today's session, out of home is a cost-effective medium, right? CPMs are on the rise as you look at other traditional channels during an election cycle, like television, perhaps radio, et cetera. But out of home still remains one of the most cost-effective advertising mediums to exist. And I think too, it's memorable. It's something that can't be skipped. I think there's nothing worse than tuning into primetime TV and being interrupted by an ad, whether it's political or otherwise, right? It feels a little bit intrusive to most consumers. The same with social media. You're scrolling your For You page on TikTok or Reels on Instagram, and it seems like every third piece of content that you're exposed to is advertising, and you just want to skip it and get to the content that you're there to consume. But out of home is not intrusive, right? It's part of that daily journey that we take as consumers every day, commuting to and from our office, picking up our kids from school, taking my dogs to the vet, running errands, et cetera. It's kind of woven into the fabric of our everyday lives, and it is brand safe. As an advertiser, as a brand marketer, you choose where and when your brand shows up and how they show up for consumers. You don't have necessarily the same level of risk associated with other formats where your content or your advertising may appear adjacent to what some might consider offensive or content that's not age appropriate for kids, et cetera. So lots of benefits to out of home, I think, that marketers should lean into during an election cycle, especially one like this.
Absolutely. And yeah, viewer fatigue. So even if it's not something that directly kind of violates the vibe that you want for your brand, I have a couple of Gen Zs in my life that I spend a fair amount of time with, and they've been talking about one candidate. You can guess probably who that seems to just be all over their TikTok. So they're pretty excited about it on the one hand, but yeah, the pervasiveness is significant. And for instance, I mentioned that I was in Greater Boston. Massachusetts has 5 ballot questions in addition to the races that are in play. And so that's really 10 additional points of view, one on each side of the ballot question, that really takes up, just an incredible disproportionate amount of our bandwidth as consumers of messaging in different ad formats.
Totally.
So yeah, that's great. Let's see. I guess that this is a good time for me to spend a couple of minutes highlighting why Soofa is a great out-of-home alternative, but perhaps even a better choice in that Soofa doesn't accept any political or advocacy advertising at all. So that means it's a great time to give us a try if you have some interest. Here are some of the reasons that you might want to try. You can see this is an example of a recent grand opening we supported for Stop and Shop, which is a big grocery retailer owned by Ahold, and Giant Foods is another of their brands. So Soofa has a great origin story, right? So being woman founded and startup started in MIT's world famous Media Lab. These signs are just under 8 feet tall, and they're in a lot of highly walkable neighborhoods. So Soofa's exclusive locations means that you can reach into neighborhoods where sometimes traditional out of home can't. They're just not there. Community centric. I am already stealing from you, Chris, because you said something this morning that I've taken it out into the market already. In our heads down, if you can see my phone, in our heads down world, this is a heads up opportunity for you to message and brand for you or your clients. And, the digital screen, 40% of the inventory is dedicated to our municipalities, to our landowners, the cities and towns with whom we partner. So that means engagement at a different level than your average run-of-the-mill out-of-home sign. You can see an example where there's 4 quadrants, the neighborhoods and cities. Boston does this for a variety of their neighborhoods, not just the overall market. There's local news and information. Transit times are big, of course. Weather. It integrates, the software integrates with a Facebook feed or an X feed. You can poll your constituents as a city and town. So I think that community-centric aspect of it is worth note. And it's also why there's no political or advocacy advertising on these signs. It would simply be inappropriate for our landowners to in any way be associated with it. Instead, you get a halo as an advertising associated with local news and information that people generally trust still for now, for good, and flexible branding. So you can use the digital. Of course, we always advocate for you to wrap these signs. That's, all 4 sides in a design that really reflects your capabilities. And then lastly, though it might go at the top, they're 100% solar powered. So that sustainability is super important to everyone these days, almost everyone, I guess. And it's also the reason that, we're in these walkable neighborhoods. There's no trenching. The signs can be installed in under 30 minutes. So they're a really nice alternative to what else is out there, and a great way to advertise all the time, but certainly during political season as well. This is a nice way for you to look at the back side of the sign. The digital screen's only in one, and a longtime partner, the New England Revolution, here showing part of their wrap. The screens are the same technology as your Kindle. They're e-ink technology. So if you've ever tried to read your Kindle on the beach, you know that amazingly, it's really easy to read on the beach. And that's one of the advantages of the digital screen technology. And then finally, we can, because of the easy nature of installing and uninstalling these, we can really provide something very custom. An activation at an event, a pop-up outside a retail store, and a lot of custom configurations. This is an example of the Premier Lacrosse League, which is an example of someone that we went in and supported an event for recently. A little more broader under this umbrella, I'll tell a quick story about Brookline Bank. The city of Brookline is affluent. It's adjacent to Boston and had almost no out-of-home. So Soofa worked with Brookline, the town of Brookline, as well as Brookline Bank, customized a footprint, installed the signs, and we're approaching year 6 of a sponsorship plan with them in a footprint like that. So lots of different ways to customize a Soofa campaign. And I think that's probably it for us right now. Chris, do you have anything that you want to add here, or should we go ahead and open up for questions?
Yeah, I think Q&A is what most probably here for. But I do want to double click on something that you mentioned on an earlier slide about Soofa being community centric. I think Soofa is without a doubt a leader in this space, and I think started the groundswell that we're experiencing. Many other out of home publishers are borrowing from this same strategy. Susan mentioned in a heads down world, Soofa signs are engaging customers, encouraging them to look up. But this has really become, and not just for Soofa, but for other platforms like Soofa Signs, the community message board. This is where people are turning to for trusted content, whether that's news, weather, arrival and departure information for transit, etc. I think it is also connected in a way to that theme of brand safety. You don't have to worry about the type of content that's being surfaced on displays like Soofa Signs, because it is highly curated, and like I said, brand safe. Unlike maybe an online digital publisher or social, where you have the expectation, a reasonable expectation that you're going to appear alongside brand safe content, but this is a crazy world. You never know. So I think it's important to emphasize that it's a great feature and benefit to advertising on Soofa, but more broadly, a great reason why advertisers and brand marketers should really be leaning into out of home, I think, is a channel right now.
Yeah. Great. Thank you. Yeah, I love your perspective. We have such complementary perspectives because much of my week and weeks are spent, really developing business on a local and regional level. And your perspective, of course, is very much national. So I love to hear from you as well, what you see and what you feel the advantages are. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, you bet.
All right. I'm going to take us all the way to this slide with the Q&A and invite our audience, our participants, our guests to ask any questions of either of us. You can direct them or you can just, go ahead and put them generally up here in the comments. So Melissa asks, is it smart to lean into political themed messaging during this period? I don't know about you, Chris, but I feel a little ill-equipped, frankly, to answer too much about creative. That's sort of not been my wheelhouse over time. I think that unfortunately or fortunately would need to be something that would be on a case-by-case basis, depending on your client. If there's some sort of natural alignment, of course, it would make sense to capitalize on it.
Yeah, absolutely. I like you, I've spent the better part of my career in media, not in creative. So I'm hardly the expert in this arena. But I think, for some brands, there is an opportunity to be contextually relevant. If it's part of your brand ethos and wouldn't feel disingenuous to consumers, then I think absolutely something maybe that you lean into. And Ben and Jerry's, I think, is one of the best examples that I can think of. And we've seen over the past several election cycles, they lean into voter registration drives and getting people out to the polls, which I think is incredibly important and a responsibility that we all have as Americans. So if I were to look back on my experience, I think the brands that have done it well, leaning into politically themed messaging, are ones that, again, have that part of their sort of ethos, and not ones that are just looking to capitalize on the moment, if that makes sense.
Oh, that's such a great answer. I mean, authenticity is, whatever. I mean, I guess you're suspect completely of any ad campaign, but any sort of authenticity you can create, I think is great. And the more I learn and the more I understand, particularly for younger millennials and Gen Zs, having some sort of purpose, having an alignment, a greater good kind of feature is a driver for them to do business with a brand for sure. And I like to think, frankly, that Soofa's sustainability, the 100% solar powered, comes into that category too. I just spoke with someone right before we started this that we've kind of been chasing to join us as a new advertiser for a while. And she felt it was part of her personal brand to bring a sustainable option to the table for her organization. So yeah, that's a great answer. Thank you.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. Okay. We have another one. So John wants to know about certain industries that are most affected by political ad spending and how they should adapt. So we think the adaptation is to put all your money in out of home, all obviously, John. So that's the short answer. I mean, I think that as I think about, again, the majority of these dollars do go to television, but also, television more broadly, right, in terms of cable and OTT and any sort of radio, even print, frankly, digital search, I even read, is largely impacted by these dollars. So who's most impacted? I think I think people that are less entrenched with their media partners. So, if you're coming in to advertise an event and you're on a huge list of spots that are going to get moved, you might suffer more than somebody who's been, on the battlefield with the partner year after year for a long period of time. So I think it depends. I think the answer is, once again, it depends. I think that relationships matter, as they do in everything. And if you're certainly trying to do something timely, I mean, on the other hand, let's face it, this is a money making opportunity. So if you want to pay the freight, you might get the clearance ahead of somebody else too, because the bank or the healthcare organization, they might be okay to message after as well. I don't know.
Totally. Yeah, I would agree. I think channels that are most disrupted during election cycles tend to be, like you mentioned, television, social, absolutely affected, and it's really the small and medium businesses, I think, that are displaced from those channels and find it hard to compete with election dollars. And out of home provides, like we shared earlier, a really cost-effective means for mass reach. So any advertiser that's displaced by television or social or otherwise, I think would benefit from leaning into other high reach, cost-effective mediums like outdoor.
Yeah, agree. Let's see. We have another one here if I can pull it up. Rob wants to know, how do you prioritize ad placements when political ads dominate the most popular channels? So we don't want to be redundant and say try out of home, but I think I have to bring it back to money. Money talks, right? The closer you get to an election, the higher the rates are to clear. Additionally, if you're a registered political candidate, you are afforded the lowest unit rate. So the lowest rates on a station or an organization or a platform. The ballot questions, the PAC money, they tend to pay a higher rate. So it's kind of money talks, you can delay.
Totally. Yeah.
You
But
can
budget,
delay.
I think, is important, and I think it gives advertisers a really unique opportunity to reevaluate their media strategy, or within channels, how are they allocating funds? Maybe broadcast is dominated by political advertising right now, but cable affords you a safe haven. Are there cable channels or networks that you might want to lean into because it's synergistic with your brand and the audience that you're trying to reach? I think CTV is an interesting new frontier for many advertisers right now. Just a year ago, tuning into most streaming platforms, especially ones that carried live television content, if there was a break in that programming, I was often staring at a blank screen. Your content, your game, your show will resume in 60 seconds because advertisers weren't yet prioritizing CTV like they were linear television. So I think that could be a potential safe haven. I don't want to beat a dead horse. Obviously, we both exist in the out-of-home ecosystem and would advocate that advertisers look to out-of-home. But I think there are other pockets in various media channels that you could potentially prioritize when political ads are dominating those channels.
Yeah, it might really be an opportunity. I mean, I haven't worked on the agency side of the business in a long time, but I can imagine a scenario where, as a subject matter expert, you want to push a client to try something new, and they may be a little reluctant, right? Tried and true, I guess, is always better than the experimentation you kind of referenced. But, with the typical popular programming, news being news and sports, being so tapped across all media, uh, why not? Why not? You might get some buy-in to go ahead and zig instead of zag, you know, which
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
that's always an
absolutely.
interesting thing to do, a good opportunity.
Yeah, I think advertisers that are most successful are the ones that constantly test and learn. That needs to be part of, I think, everyone's strategy. We talked a little bit earlier about the targetability and measurability of out of home. If it's tough to compete with political ad spend on most broadcast news or sports, how can you reach sports consumers, in physical space? Out of home is incredibly targeted, or can be incredibly targeted, and there are numerous partners in the space that help us understand who's exposed to those placements, and are they over-indexing for NFL, for example, or are they athleisure shoppers, or they vacation in specific destinations. You could really take the profile of your consumer that might include news, sports, or other content, and apply that to physical space on things like Soofa signs, and that might be what gets you over the hump, so to speak, this election cycle.
Yeah. I'll put one other idea out there, and that's NPR. So, public media space, both radio and television. Boston happens to have two good, more than two, but two fairly high profile NPR affiliates that do local programming as well. That sort of sponsorship opportunity in that space is open to advertisers too without kind of suffering through some of what we've talked about with the high political demand. So that's another way to go and something else to try. And
Yeah, absolutely.
supporting public media is not a bad idea personally. So probably shouldn't interject too many personal views, but I'll go out on a limb and share that one. So
I love it.
I think that's all we have for right now. Is there anyone else that wants to raise their hand or participate? Okay, then I'm gonna hope that Chris and/or I hear from you. If there's anything that we might do to just be an ear or a consultant or certainly a partner in any of your out-of-home advertising efforts, our contact information is here. And, thank you very much. I hope we have a chance to do something on another topic again soon. Thank you.
Yeah, this was great. Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye, everyone. Have a great day.